Hello guys, in this video I'll be showing you how you can create a cool testimonial section of your website just like this one using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So what we have here is a logo of a particular client or the platform that you did a job, and then we have the testimonial from the client and the name of that particular client at the end here. Right here, we have the number of the testimonial stroke the total number of the testimonials that are available in the system. At the bottom here, we have some buttons to switch between different testimonials. Right now, we are in 1 of 3, and when I click next, we can go to 2 of 3. When I click previous, we can go to 1 of 3 again. When I click previous again, we can go all the way to the last testimonial. So this is a cool section that you can add to your portfolio website so that to increase trust to any potential clients. In case you're new here, my name is Charles. I am a JavaScript developer, a coffee lover, and I create coding content here on YouTube. Now that sounds awesome, so make sure you subscribe and turn on post notification so that you don't miss any of my videos. In my code editor, I already have some starter files which will be available in my GitHub, and I'll leave a link at the description section below in case you need it. But I am going to explain what I have here, and starting with this script tag right here is a link to Font Awesome, because we will be needing Font Awesome icons for those previous and the next button. You can see we have an icon in there. And then we have a link to the main.js file. So it is right here, but currently it's just empty file. And then this script tag, which links to our main.js file, have an attribute called differ, which will make the script to load after our HTML. So this is similar by adding the script tag at the end of the body tag, okay? And then we have a main.css file. So this is the link to our main.css file, and what we have on the main.css file is just an import of Poppins font family from Google Fonts, and some few stylings right here. So I have selected all the elements and changed the margin and the padding to 0 and the box sizing to border box so that we don't have weird behavior when styling our elements. And when I open here, we also have a logo here, and this is the Upwork logo. So you can include the logos on a folder like images or logos folder and include them all there, but because I'm just working with one, I have just included it at the root. So I'll go back to the index.html file and open this file with a live server so that we can see what we are doing. And I'll go into the body tag and we start writing the HTML for our section. In the body section, I'll add a div with a class of testimonials container. So dot testimonials hyphen container, and then in this container we will have a h2, which is our heading, and I'll just say many satisfied clients. After the h2, I'll have another div with a class of testimonial, and this testimonial will be this particular testimonial right here. So I'll duplicate this letter to two other testimonials because they'll have the same structure, but for now let's fill this one out. To start with, we have a logo here which will have a link to this particular website for the client or the platform that you used to do a particular job. So right here I'll start with an a tag, and inside the a tag we will have an image, and the href for the a tag, in this case I'll just use a hash, and then the image here, the source would be upwork.png, and the alt, I'll just say Upwork. After our logo, we will have a p tag which will contain our testimonial right there. So right here, I'll include a p tag and some dummy text, rorem, and then at the end of the p tag, I will include a span, and this span will include the name of our client. So I'll just use hyphen and Charles. After the p tag, we will have the numbers. Right here, I'll just include a span with a class of number text. So number hyphen text, enter, and this is a span, so I need to change this. And in here, I'll just manually type the number of that particular testimonial. But if you want, you can automate this using JavaScript. For now, I just leave it at this. So that's it for our single testimonial, and I'll copy this and paste it 2 more times. So the first and the second. I will customize each of these testimonials. And the thing that I'll change is just the name here in my case. So I'll say this is Chaoo, and I'll change the number here to 2. I'll also change this one to Chaoo Charles, and change the number here to 3 of 3. And then lastly, we will have some buttons here, and I'll just add a div after our testimonial here. Inside this div, we will use an a tag to create our buttons. So the first one will have a class of previous, and the href won't really point to anything, so I'll just remove it. And then inside the a tags, we will have a font awesome icon. So I'll say I with a class of fast and another class of far hyphen long hyphen arrow hyphen alt hyphen left. So this is a font awesome class. I will enter, and I'll just copy this and paste it down here. I will change the class here to be next, and the class here to be alt right. So when I go back here, you can see the image was added with all our text. When I scroll down, we will have those 2 arrows. So that's it for our HTML structure. Let's go ahead and start styling this using CSS. I'll open main.css file and cross this image. I will select the testimonials container, which includes all our elements here. So dot testimonials hyphen container, and I'll give this a min height of 100 VH. We will set the font family to Poppins and a fallback of sans serif. We will center the content using display of flex, align items, center, justify content to be center. We will add a flex direction of column, and also add a background of RGBA, which will have values of 235, 235, 235, and an alpha of 0.5. So this is the opacity, and then that's it for the testimonials container. And when I scroll at the bottom here, you can see the button was centered and the content is all at the center. I'll come down here and select our H2, which is this heading. I will add a margin of 0.5 rem. I will add a font size of 2.2 rem. I will add a font weight of 400, and that's it for the title. We can go ahead and select a single testimonial using this class dot testimonial, and we will give each testimonial a height of 50 VH, a width of 80 VW, and this is the viewport width, this is the viewport height. I'll add a margin of 2 rem, and to start with, we can make this image to be smaller because it's overflowing. So at the bottom here, before we continue with the testimonial styling, I'll select the image. So testimonial img, and we'll give it a height of 2 rem. So it's much smaller now, and then I will give it a width of outer and a margin bottom of 1.5 rem, and that's it for the image. Okay, I'll come back to the testimonial right here. I will add a padding of 45 px, 20 px, and 20 px. Let's add now a background which will be white, so hash FFF, and you can see our testimonials now are taking shape. Let's add the border top, which is this one right here. So I'll say border hyphen top. It will be 4px solid RGB of 0, 184, 190, and there we go. We can add a box shadow, which will be I missed a semicolon, which will be 0px, 2px, 10px, and the color will be RGBA. It will be black, so 0, 0, 0, but it will have an opacity of 0.2. I will add a border radius, so border hyphen radius, and this will be just 5px, and we'll have a curve at the ends. Now let's center the content that is inside each testimonial, that is the logo, the paragraph, and the numbers here. we will still use flexbox. So display of flex, align items to be center, justify content to be center. We will also change the flex direction to be column. So you can see now the logo is at the center and all the content will be at the center. We will add an animation for each of these testimonial, and the animation will be called a fade. So right here I can just add it. Animation will be fade and it will go for 0.2 seconds, and that will be applied every time we are loading each testimonial. So when I come to this and go to next, you can see a straight fade, a straight fade, a straight fade, and that's what this animation will do. Let's define that animation at the bottom here, and we use at keyframes to define an animation in CSS. So at keyframes, and the name of the animation is fade. You can give any name as long as this name will be the same as this one. And then we will have a from and a to. So we will start from an opacity of 0.4 to an opacity of 1, and that is all that we have to do for the animation. So this is how we define the animation, and this is how we apply it on an element. And you can apply it on multiple elements if you want. If you want to apply a fade on a H2, you'll just add this particular line on the H2 at the top right there. Let's style our paragraph. We had already styled the image, so at the bottom here we will select the paragraph dot testimonial p, and we want it to look like a quote, just like this one. So you can see the way it's in italics and big fonts. So we will just apply those stylings very fast right here. So I'll add a font style of oblique, and I'll also increase the font size to 19px, and then we can change the font weight to 400, and the content may overflow, especially in mobile. So if I go to mobile mode, you can see the way the content is just overflowing and it doesn't look nice. So what we can do is to come right here and add an overflow of outer, and you can see that have fixed the problem. And because we used VH and VW, you can see that the content is automatically responsive even to the smallest screen possible. So that's cool. So let's style the name of the client here. So I'll come right here and select P span. We give it a font size of 17px and a font style of normal, so that it look different from the rest of the testimonial. So font style to be normal. Let's go ahead and style our numbers here, and we gave them a class of number text if I am not wrong. So right here I'll say number text, and I'll give it a font size which will be much smaller. So this will be 15px, we will change the opacity so that it's not too much visible than the rest of the content. So 0.7, we can add a margin top of 1.5 frame, and these settings I think they aren't being applied, so I'll check the class again if it's number text. Okay, we gave it a hyphen. I can either remove the hyphen or just include it here. So yeah, there is a difference now. The next thing that we are going to style is uh, our buttons right here, next and previous. So let's select them, dot previous, comma, dot next, and first of all we will change display to be inline block. So inline block, and then we will add a background of white, so hash FFF, and we will add a box shadow of 0, 2px, 4px, 1px, and an RGBA of 50, 50, 93, and an opacity of 0.1. When I scroll, you can see that little background was added. Let's go ahead and change the width and the height because they are too small. So I'll add a width of 3 rem, a height of 3 rem, and we will simply make it a circular using border radius of 50%. So when I scroll again, you can see those big circles right there. I'll give it a padding of 0.5 rem, a margin of 0.5 rem, and we can change the font size of the icon to be 1.5 rem, so they'll be much bigger. When I scroll down, you can see this is cool, and this margin is too big. I made a mistake there. I should have a point. So when I scroll down, yeah, that's better. I'll add a text align of center, and finally I will add a color of RGB 0, 184, and 190. So that's my theme right there. Now when I go at the bottom here, all we will do is to add a hover effect. So dot prev full colon hover, comma, dot next, full colon hover, and we will change the cursor to be pointer. We will add a transform and then translate along the y-axis, and we add a negative of 4px. So when we hover, the button will move straightly up. So when I come at the bottom and hover, you can see. And that's it for the styling. So you can see we have already achieved so much. The only thing that remains is to use JavaScript to hide these testimonials and show each testimonial at a time, and then use our buttons to go to the next or the previous testimonial. So when I expand this, you can see the way it looks. It's just the same as this one. So I'll jump to JavaScript file. The first thing that we will do here is to define a counter. So let counter be equal to 1, and this is what will help us to know which testimonial we are in. And then we will define a function right here called show testimonials. So function show testimonials, I hope that's the spelling. And then this function will receive a value of the counter. So I'll pass an n here, and this will basically represent the value of the counter. And then in here we can select the different testimonials using let testimonials be equal to document dot get element by class name, and the class name of our testimonials is testimonial, and this one should be inside quotes. So yeah, that way. So what this will do is that it will select all our testimonials, which are 3, using this particular class name. Now I can go at the bottom here, and the first thing that I want us to do is to hide all our testimonials. So first of all, I will define another variable here, let I, and then use for loop to loop through the different testimonials right here. So I'll come and say for in brackets I is equals to 0, I is less than testimonials, and this testimonials is this one right here, dot length. So this will give us the total length of our testimonials, because it's storing it as an array I plus plus, and all we will do in here is say testimonials, and we use these square brackets for arrays and use an I in there. So this will be looping through our testimonials. So if we are in the first testimonials, the value will be 0. So this will select the first testimonial, and then we will change the style dot display, and we will add a display of none. So we won't have any testimonials to show. And then to call this function so that we can see the effect taking place, I'll come at the top here and call it show testimonials, and I'll call that function. So you can see that our testimonials have disappeared, but when I change this back to flex, you can see that they are available. So initially we are hiding all the testimonials, and then we will display each testimonial at a time. So this will remain to be none, and then at the bottom here, after hiding all the testimonials, we will display each testimonial at a time. So I'll say testimonials and use the square brackets for array again, and then I'll use the counter and subtract 1. Remember, we gave the counter a value of 1, but the first testimonial in an array have a value of 0. So when counter is 1 and we minus 1, we will have a value of 0, and that will select the first testimonial. And we will add a display. So right here I'll say dot style dot display of flex, and you can see that now we can see our first testimonial. So this is cool. And what happens when we change the value of counter to 2? Can we see the second testimonial? Yeah, it's happening. You can see now we are in the second testimonial. When I change this to 3, you can see that we are in the third testimonial. What happens when I change the value to 4? We have an empty value. So we need to perform some checks so that this never happens. When we exit the counter, we don't want to have empty display here. So remember, this was the value of the counter, this n. So I'll pass the counter in here so that we can properly perform the checks. So when I pass the counter there, we will receive the value of n as 4. And then right here, we can perform some checks. So I'll create some spacing and I'll say if n is less than testimonials dot length, what we will do is to reset the counter to 1. So counter will be equal to 1. So this is supposed to be greater than, okay? If n is greater than testimonials dot length, we reset the counter to 1. And you can see that issue have disappeared. When the counter is 4, we don't have any issue. When the counter is 5, we don't have any issue. When the counter is 2, we will see the second testimonial. What happens when the counter is less than 1? So the counter is 0 and empty. What is happening is that we are taking the counter 0 minus 1, so the array is at -1 and we don't have such an element, and so this style is not being applied, and we had initially hidden all the elements and we get nothing. We will add another check here. If n is less than 1, what we will do is to set the counter to be equal to testimonials dot length. So it will show the last element in our array. And you can see now we have 3 of 3 when the counter is less than 1. So this is cool. And the only thing that remains is for us to work with our buttons. When I click this one, we want us to increase the counter. When I click this one, I want us to decrease the counter. So right here, I will take the counter back to 1 so that we can see the first element by default. So yep. And then at the top of this function, I'll define another function. So function, and I'll call this one compute testimonials. So this will just compute the testimonial that we are at every time we click the previous or the next button. And then I'll call this with a value of t, and I'll show you what this t represents. And then in here we will call our show testimonials function, show testimonials, and in here we will take the counter that we are currently in, counter, and we will add the value of t. So plus is equals to t. So this will simply add the value of t. So when t is 1, we want to add the counter by 1, so the counter becomes 2 and we display that particular testimonial. When the t is -1, we want to subtract 1 from the counter so that we go to the previous testimonial. So now all remains is to call our compute testimonials function with the value of t, and we will do that every time we are clicking next or previous. Let's start with the previous, and what we can do is to use document.querySelector So document.query selector, and then in here we will select the class of previous.prev, and then we will add an onClick event. So dot add event listener, and the event listener that we are adding is called click. After this, we will have a callback function, which is an arrow function, and in here all we will do is to call this compute testimonials function with the value of t, and this time it's previous, so I'll give it a value of -1. So every time we click previous, we will pass a value of -1 to t, and then this will simply decrease the counter by 1, and we will go to the previous testimonial. So when I come here and click previous, you see we are in the third testimonial. When I click previous again, we are in the second testimonial, and this previous button is now working. When I go to next, nothing happens because we haven't added that on click event. So all I'll do is to just copy this and paste it down here, change the document.query selector to next, and then we will also have a click event, but this time we will pass a value of 1 to the compute testimonials function. So every time we click the next button, we will add 1 to the counter, and we will see the next testimonial. So when I click next, there we go, 2, 3, 1, and this is already working. So that's the JavaScript code for a slideshow, and I can extend this a little bit if you don't mind. And what I want to show you is how you can make this one to have an automatic slideshow, so that you don't have to click or do anything. It will just show itself after some time. So what you can do is to call this compute testimonials function with a set interval function. So at the bottom here, I can say set interval, and then in here we will call our compute testimonials function, and without those brackets, a comma, and then the interval that we want to show our slideshow. So I can add 200 milliseconds, which will be 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds we will be calling that function. So at the top here, I can remove the value of t and add a default value of +1 at the counter. So after every 2 seconds, we will add 1 to the counter. So you can see it's happening. You can see I am not clicking any button, but we are switching through the different testimonials. So if you don't want this to be manual thing, you can use a set interval function and give this a good value, enough value for a person to read the testimonial. Maybe 5 seconds will be good enough. But if you want to make it default so that a person have to click this one, you can just omit this and use the code that we had earlier, where we have a value of t and a value of t. You can use any variable right there. And that's it. That's how we can create a testimonial section with a slideshow. You can apply the same concept for an image slideshow. So this is cool, and that's it for today's video. I hope you learned something. If you're still thinking of subscribing, please make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any cool videos just like this one. And I'll see you next, guys. Love you all and always stay awesome.